Dear festive assembly, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. So we are very, very pleased that the traditional Japanese company Shimadzu is celebrating annually the day of the death of Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen. From Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen's birthplace, we are sending our kindest regards to your special event which takes place today in Kyoto. My name is Dr. Uwe Busch and I am the director of the German Röntgen Museum in Remscheid-Lennep. I am a medical physicist and I'm working for the museum since 30 years now. So the German Röntgen Museum is situated right in the middle of Germany. It's about 50 km north of Cologne and it's at the birthplace of Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen. The history of this museum goes back to an idea of the German Röntgen Society. The German Röntgen Society is a medical society which was founded in 1905 in Berlin. And this society, in the second meeting, decided to found a special museum which had the opportunity and the offer to make teaching to new young radiologists. And the past president of the German Röntgen Society then came to Röntgen's birthplace in Remscheid-Lennep and asked for creating a special monument. And you can see that special monument right in front of the entrance door of the museum. That was founded in 1930. And at the inauguration of this monument, a huge community, international community of radiologists attend that ceremony. And most of the exhibits we had from the early beginnings came from this collection of radiologists from the early beginnings of the 20th century. And this is a huge collection. We do have about 155,000 exhibits in total in our archive. And the main task of this museum is to inform the public about the important discovery that Roentgen made in 1895. That's 127 years ago. And that was great to have this opportunity to show all the different things belonging with X-rays. Not only the medical things, which is very, very important to talk about medicine, but as you know that X-rays are used in different kind of fields. There are many, many applications. And these applications are going from the microcosm up to the macrocosm. As you know, all about nanotechnology, and we do have all these discoveries on genomes, and we have all these discoveries on chromosomes, and we have all these things in the very small part of the atoms and the molecules, and then it goes up right into the universe, and we're looking to exploding stars and black holes and neutron stars and detecting all the X-rays coming from outer space. So this is a huge and interesting spectrum, and that is what the museum is going to show. The main part is a bit of, mostly of medical parts, diagnostic and therapy, and the other parts are dealing with all these other subjects. All the things we're doing today, all the things we're doing in public. Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen was born here in Remscheid-Lennep, 27th of March 1845, and his father was a clothes merchant and his mother was a native from Amsterdam. And because he wanted to make a special academic career, his father just heard about a university that is in Switzerland. It's called the Polytechnical School, that offers young students the opportunity to enter that school without school examination. And Roentgen then went to Switzerland, went to Zurich, went to the Polytechnical School, and he started there studying mechanical engineering. And he finished his study with a diploma, and after that he just got in connection with a very important physicist in those days. And from those days he was very famous in the physical world, and he got the offer from the University of Würzburg, and he went to Würzburg. And later he said that was the best years in my life to be in Würzburg. He had a lot of friends there, they all lived in the same street, and he then, at the 8th of November 1895, he discovered this special new kind of ray which revolutionized everything in the scientific world. So Roentgen had a lot of hobbies. One of his very, very main hobbies was photography. And as you all know, he used this kind of special method to document his scientific results. So when he was working in his lab in Würzburg, he saw something coming on a fluorescent screen. And then during his experiments, while make some absorption experiments with different objects, he then recognized that his photographic plates are sensible for this kind of radiation. So he took these photographic plates and took pictures of all these things, and that's where this beautiful and fantastic picture of the hand of Mrs. Röntgen came from. So we are here in the room where we can see the reconstruction of the devices that Röntgen used for his discovery. And that was just quite very common for those days in the 19th century for physicists to work with this special equipment that was used to analyze the so-called cathode rays. Cathode rays were discovered by Michael Faraday in the early beginnings of the 19th century, and when you want to see cathode rays you need a special ionizing tube, and that's the main exhibit you can see here in the scenery. And this ionizing tube is a glass tube with two metal electrodes inside, and both were connected with a battery with a positive pole and a negative pole. And when you want to see something going on into the tube, you do not need only high voltage put on these two electrodes, you do need a special vacuum in the tube. And the main exhibit on left side, left behind the tube, you can see this is a vacuum pump. This is the only modern equipment that one can use that was developed only 2 years before his discovery, and it enables him to let automatically evacuate this tube. And when you look at this tube and you darken the room completely, you can see there is a light coming out of the tube. There's a kind of a green light coming out of the tube. And the light, the color of the light, depends on what kind of gas you have inside your tube. So when you evacuate the tube in about millibars, you can see that there's a green band going from the cathode to the anode. And that was interesting for the physicists. In those days, they had no idea about what is electrical current. So they had to check what kind of cathode rays are what is the content of these cathode rays. And that was where Röntgen was focusing on. And he looked at this light, and then he saw by accident that there was a kind of a fluorescent material lying on his table right beneath the induction coil, and these crystals began to glow. There is no other light in this room except the light coming out of the ionizing tube. So it was very easy to answer that question, that the light coming out of the tube is responsible for the fluorescent effects on the fluorescent screen. But he did not want to leave this with a theoretical explanation. He wanted to check this in an experiment. And that was very easy to do for him because he covered the tube with a black cardboard. So no light, visible light, is able to penetrate the black cardboard. The room was completely dark. And when the room is completely dark, there is no light. And when there is no light, there couldn't be any fluorescent effects on the crystals. But as you all know, this does not work, because the crystals were still glowing. Without light, or what kind of things could it be? So Röntgen then started an examination about that there must be a kind of new light coming out of the tube. The only explanation in those days that was necessary to do so. So he just said a new kind of light is coming out of the tube, and this new light has two main properties. It has much more energy than visible light, so it can penetrate the black cardboard. And the other main property is that it is invisible because the room was completely dark. And he named this new light then as X-rays. Well, Röntgen published his first communication in the early beginnings of January 1896. And as we all know, that it was then in Kyoto where the first experiments with X-rays took place then in Japan. Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen received a lot of letters of congratulation for his discovery, and one letter he got from a special colleague from Japan, and that was Professor Muraoka from Kyoto Technical University. And he was connected with him when Roentgen was a private docent in these days in Strasbourg, when he worked together with August Kundt. Muraoka was a student of August Kundt, and he made his diploma in physics in Strasbourg. So in those days, both guys were connected with each other, and Muraoka sent then a letter of congratulations to Roentgen and just sent to him a very nice picture of his whole family dressed in a special Japanese traditional clothes. And that is one of the interesting exhibits we do have now in our archive. So in 1901, the first Nobel Prizes were awarded in Stockholm, Sweden, and it was the decision of the scientific committee that Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen was awarded the first ever given Nobel Prize in physics. Now, we are here now in a special room which shows a contemporary X-ray practice from the early beginnings of the 20th century. This is an equipment from 1905, and you can see here there is an ionizing X-ray tube mounted on a wooden support without any shieldings. And you can see the electrical wires running through the room without any isolation. And you can imagine how dangerous it was to work in these kind of cabinets. And you just to be very, very careful not to touch the electrical cables when the high electricity is running through, switched on. So, and you see here, mostly the radiologist worked with photographic plates and ionizing and fluorescent screens. So the radiologist took this fluorescent screen in both hands and stood behind the patient and hold the screen just behind him, and during the examination he mostly got the same irradiation dose as the patients too. So some of these early pioneers died, of course, because of radiation damages. And in the early beginnings, it took a long time to prepare a radiograph. So when we look back at Roentgen's experiments in his lab when he was using his photographic plates, it took more than 30 minutes to prepare the X-ray picture of the hand of his wife. So when you wanted to make a radiograph, a thorax radiograph of your lungs, it took more than about 50 minutes in the early days. So you get not the very good radiographs, and it was just a little bit of thinking about what could be seen on that picture. In these early days, so it was then that the radiologists usually worked retrospective. So they took a radiograph of their patient disease and they were not sure about what's to be seen on the screen. And then they archived the pictures, and perhaps later the patient died, and they made a kind of they looked into the dead body and they found a special, for instance, the tumor in the lungs. And then they took out the radiographs again and they compared the findings of the surgery with the picture would be seen on a radiograph. And so radiologists learned, oh, in this case, this was a kind of a lung tumor of that type. And one main aspect of the museum is to show other scientific fields outside medical parts. And there is a huge spectrum of opportunities to use X-rays in different scientific fields. And it goes from material testings, you can look at materials without destroying the material. You can look inside paintings, you can look inside Egyptian mummies and make some studies, especially with CT scanning on Egyptian mummies. Or we have got X-ray microscopy where you can see chromosomes in living areas in the cells. And we do have got special X-ray laser systems. The idea of having X-rays goes back to the year 1895, so when Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen discovered X-rays at the University of Würzburg. And this opportunity gave us a vision of the invisible. The interesting thing which we have today is that we can look inside materials, inside a human being without destroying the investigating object. This is a very special and interesting method which takes place a long time and will be bright into the future.